Dating is a nightmare for healthy people, but for us, it's even more complicated. So let's talk about it. I think that the first thing we all think about is when should I tell the person that I have this autoimmune disease, especially if it's something that really affects your life a lot. So at this point, I match energy. If someone is really engaging in the conversation and they're wanting me to get to know them and they're telling me all these things about themselves, very personal things, then I will get into more personal things about myself, without oversharing, of course. But I think that when it comes to this, I would rather give someone the chance to get to know me a little bit and make sure that they're actually going to be in my life, that this isn't someone that I'm just going to talk to for a few weeks or a few months, that I really do want to move forward with them. But I do suggest having the conversation with them before something happens, like, I don't know, maybe they find your sharps container for your Benlista around your house and like ask questions, or your medication, or wonder why you're taking so much medication throughout the day or aren't feeling good. And the other thing is that I think it depends on your disease activity too, because if you have a high level of disease activity and you're not on a treatment that works for you yet, this could really be a problem when you're trying to date someone new. And it's hard for people, especially if they're healthy people, to understand that you can't always keep plans. Sometimes you're just not feeling good very randomly without warning, and it just is what it is, and you have to take care of yourself. So without being on the proper treatment, it would be very difficult trying to date. Like this whole time I've not been dating, and when I was in a relationship before, definitely wasn't in remission, and it was a disaster. So I'm just saying, you might also be so focused on what's going on with you and all these miserable symptoms that you're having, and so focused on finding the right doctor, and that might be so time consuming that you might also miss a lot of red flags. And that did definitely happen to me. I was so drained and fatigued and had so many really nasty symptoms that it was hard for me to pay so much attention to what my partner at that time was doing, because I was so focused on my health and dealing with that. So that's another thing. You might want to wait until you're in a better place where your health is concerned to start dating, because it can really be consuming and hard for someone else to understand why you can't keep plans and things like that. So that's another thing. Highly suggest that if you are really getting serious with someone and they bring up, that they do or do not want to have children, you really consider that. And if you physically can have children, if maybe you have the option to get a surrogate or have a family member or a friend that you know that would be willing to be a surrogate for you. But either way, even if you are not sure, you don't know if this would be a possibility for you, but you want to have children, I think you should definitely be honest, because you don't want to be in a situation where you go all the way to the altar and you spend however long with someone and then they start really pressuring you to have children and you find out that you can't. So this is something that you definitely need to be honest with them about, honest that this might not be a possibility if that's your situation. Or I maybe could, but would have to have a surrogate, or whatever your situation is, or hey, we would have to adopt, whatever you're going to do, but I would have that conversation and I would be very honest about it, because you do not want to be however many years into a marriage with a partner that's pressuring you to have children and there's nothing you can physically do about it, even if you want to. It's just not a good position to be in. So I think that's important. Have that conversation, be honest about it. I would also be honest about your disease activity and how bad it can get, because the last thing you want is to waste time with someone that maybe can't handle this, is too selfish to handle this, or just one really big red flag to me is if I tell them that I have this disease and they do not choose to educate themselves about it, and they act completely ignorant to whatever is going on with me. Like, if you really cared about me and you were really interested in pursuing a serious relationship with me, you would educate yourself, you would go on Google, you would figure out a way. The internet, there's everything on the internet. It's not hard to find this information, to make sure that you understand, at least to the extent that is possible, what I'm going through. You know what I mean? Anybody who's not willing to do that or doesn't do that without you even having to tell them, first of all, is more than likely not worth your time. I mean, definitely not worth your time, actually. I know that you might be kind of lonely and feeling isolated if you have a lot of disease activity at the point that you're at, and you want to find somebody. I completely understand, but it's going to be, like I said, pretty difficult if you don't have this to some extent under control, at least so that your life is manageable. So that's my best advice there. And I also think that you should be very careful of predatory types of people, because when you're sick, you're vulnerable, and especially predatory men will see that and could really see you as a target. So I think that it's important that you understand that and you educate yourself on like narcissists and the types of personality disorders that will intentionally seek out vulnerable people like us. And let's be real, that is the situation. When you're sick like this and you're going through this, you're vulnerable mentally, emotionally, physically. So I think that that's another thing that's important to consider. Just be very careful when you're out there dating and meeting people. Last thing I want to tell you guys is, listen, you need to be in a place where you've accepted that you have this disease. And I think that you guys know what I'm talking about. There's definitely an adjustment period where you're like, oh my God, I'm going to have to be on these crazy medications for the rest of my life. And I'm going to have this autoimmune disease for the rest of my life. And it takes time to accept all of that. It really does. So there's this whole period of time where it can be very hard to accept, and you might just really go through some things. So I think that you need to be in a good place mentally and emotionally before you start dating. Have good self-care practices like, yoga, meditation. Make sure that you're eating right and taking care of yourself before you deal with a relationship, because the thing is, this could add a lot of stress to your already very stressful situation if you do not choose the right person and you do not have your life together and your health situation together. And the last thing you need right now is more stress. So I know I'm not trying to say you have to be in the absolute perfect situation before you start dating. I'm just saying consider these things, because stress can make lupus flare and you just don't want that. Guys, stay strong and be safe out there. Good luck.